McWilliams, he's done it! He's done it! The Michigan goal in the first period. Header for McWilliams.
Run, Pelfy scores! Pelfy! It's it! And welcome to the first episode of Bull Spittin' with your host, Derik Clark here. And this first episode's a little different. This podcast is definitely going to be an interesting one, to say the least. This is going to have not just me in here and talking to you and having one guy yap away, but I am going to have a lot of people join me. So welcome to the show. My name is Derik Clark. I'm a sports play-by-play broadcaster. Been doing it since I was 10 years old. Now I'm in college calling games for the college in every sport, basically. And now the sports director at our radio station on campus and doing all that lovely sports thing. So for the people that don't know me, that's me. For the people that know me, welcome. I know this is a different site to see that Derik has a podcast. What is going on here? So let me give you the gist. This whole first episode is going to be me yapping away, giving you the gist of what this amazing podcast is going to be, who might be on the show, and then give you the gist of everything. So let's go with the gist of this. The podcast is sports related. If you couldn't already tell already, I am a sports director at a radio station. Of course there's going to be sports. So it's going to be a sports podcast. We're going to yap it away about sports, but other stuff as well. Bull Spittin' with Clarky, as I like to call it. Bull Spittin' with Derik Clark, or Bull Spittin' with Clarky, whichever way you want to call it. I want to use this podcast to kind of yap away and talk to people as well. So it won't just be sports, but it will be sports focused, but there will be other stories to be told on this wonderful show. Now, to give a gist of who's going to be on here, because I'm home, there isn't much options. So these first episodes might include my brother quite often. And for the people that don't know our sports background, we build race cars, and I call sports games, and sports is literally on our TV right now. So, I mean, sports is everything in this family. For other people, once I'm on campus again and can bring this setup with me onto campus, we'll definitely have more of a audience appreciation when it comes to having not just me and my brother. Eventually, when I'm on campus, I will have way more people on this podcast. A couple of my buddies will probably join. I got buddies on the lacrosse team, buddies on the soccer teams, and hockey and baseball and every sport, basically. I got buddies on the teams, and maybe I'll bring some of the guys that work at the radio station on here as well. So that's the gist of the show, basically. If you're wondering for the name, yes, it's a play on a very naughty word, but also, I used to own a radio, like live radio website called Red Bull Radio on Mixlr.com, not related to Red Bull, the sports energy drink, not related, not sponsored, but Red Bull Radio, which was my own, on Mixlr.com, which is where I called sports when I was 10 years old, and calling games up here for a local college, which now I'm in a different college, and luckily enough, I play that college. So that is that for that side of every informational point, I guess. And now we're going to start talking sports, because that's the whole gist of this podcast. So, sports talk time. Now, we're going to start progressing our way. Right now, I have the London series on TV. The London series is a great thing for baseball. For people that don't know, the London series is a thing that's been going on. They had it in 2019. COVID happened. They brought it back last year in 2023, and they brought it back this year in 2024, and they plan to have it next year in 2025. Two teams get selected. They play two games back-to-back days in London, right there on the main stadium. I don't know the name of it, but the main stadium there. And it's really good right now. The Phillies are up 1-0 against the Mets in the third, and that is your live interview. So now you know I'm recording this on a Sunday, but it is what it is. So, yeah, speaking of that, yesterday was game one of the Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers down in Sunrise, Florida. And it's a pretty unique one. Just over 2,500 miles of a flight from Edmonton to Florida, and then Florida, Edmonton. So games 1 and 2 in Sunrise, Florida. Games 3 and 4 are in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And 5 is going to be in Florida. 6 will be in Edmonton. 7 will be in Florida. Again, that is if 5, 6, and 7 aren't necessary. But as of game 1, the Panthers have a 1-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup final. So, I mean, that is a pretty big thing for Florida. For the people that don't know the history of these two teams, the Florida Panthers started back in the 90s, the mid-90s, played in Miami. And then they moved to Sunrise, built a new stadium there, also in the 90s, late 90s. Weren't really in Miami for a while. And now this is their third trip into the Stanley Cup final. They played in the 90s in their third year down in Miami, or up in Miami, or what, down, I guess, in Miami. Is it down or up? I don't know. I don't have a map of Florida, but the gist is, in Miami, they played their first Stanley Cup final, and the last two have now been in Sunrise. This is their second year in a row that they're in the final. Back in the 90s, they lost to, I don't remember, actually. That's a good point. I don't remember who they lost to in the 90s, but they lost to, Colorado. They lost to Colorado in the 90s. The Panthers lost last year to the Las Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games. In the 90s, they lost to Colorado in 4. Then they lost last year in 5 games to the Golden Knights, and this year they're up 1-0. First time in franchise history that they lead a Cup series as they lead 1-0 against the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1990, when Wayne Gretzky was still in the league. His last few years there. Yeah, so Edmonton hasn't won it in over 30 years. A Canadian team hasn't won it in 31 years. The last Canadian team was 1993's Montreal Canadiens over in Montreal, Quebec. And so Edmonton pretty much has the whole province of Quebec, or provinces, I guess I should say the whole country of Canada, not just the provinces of Canada, the whole country of Canada, on their back trying to win a Stanley Cup for the first time in over 30 years. The country is in Canada. But over here in the United States, I mean, we're rooting for Florida. Here in the States, we really like seeing a first-time champion. So we saw Las Vegas last year win it for the first time, so it'd be pretty cool to see Florida winning a 3-0 dominant win. But, man, I'll tell you what, folks, if you didn't see the game, which I'm assuming there's a lot of you that don't even watch sports, so I'm going to try to explain things to you as much as I can for the people that don't watch sports or are very loose into certain sports areas. The Edmonton Oilers, I believe the shots were like 30-12 or something at the end of the game. They had way more shots on goal, but it was Sergei Bobrovsky in net for the Florida Panthers. He's been in net since the first round of the playoffs. He's not missed a game, and that is his second consecutive series in a row to start with a shutout, and also his second consecutive series to have a shutout in the series. Once again, the final score, Panthers 3, Oilers 0. So that is what's very interesting there. The team I want to root for in this series, I don't have one, because this is the first time in a while that the Stanley Cup Finals actually has, I don't want to say has, yeah, I guess this would be the words to use. It has two teams that they kind of deserve to win. Last year it was, Las Vegas and Florida. And in my mind, Florida deserved to win more than Las Vegas, because it was only the 6th season of the Las Vegas Golden Knights. They've only been now around for 7 seasons, but it was only their 6th season at the time. And for Florida, they've been around for over 20 years, just past their 20. I think this is their 25th season. So I mean, or 30th season, one of the two. And so they've been around for a while, the Panthers, and it'd be pretty cool to see them win it. I've been around for the league for a while. And everything else in that category of they've been in and around for a while, they deserve to win it. But then you have Edmonton, who hasn't won it in a while. So also about that 30-year gap, been over 30 years for Edmonton. So both teams deserve. It's been a while since we've seen Edmonton raise it, and we've never seen Florida raise the cup. So I mean, both teams deserve to win it. So it's a very interesting Stanley Cup final. You don't see that a lot. It's also two teams that, for the first time ever, they're meeting in league history. Ever in the playoffs. So, pretty cool to see there. But I'm not done with the hockey news. Aesthetics. If you don't know who Aesthetics is, he makes these great videos on YouTube. He only has about 25,000 subscribers. shout out to Aesthetics. I've been watching him for years now. Um, but on Twitter is where he's mostly big. He gets a lot of inside hockey news, and he has a lot of people about jerseys. He has a whole series called Jersey Watch, and he posted a couple days ago. Shout out to my beloved Anaheim Ducks of California. Looks like we're gonna go back to the old Mighty Duck logo of some modernization form, and then our rival, the LA Kings, they're gonna go back to their King text logo. Apparently, that's what he tweeted out. It said both logos will be a modernization of the Kings text logo and the Anaheim Ducks Mighty Duck goalie mask logo. That was Aesthetics. That isn't the official text he used. I just abbreviated what he said, basically. But a modernization of both logos. The Ducks seem to be the staying with our colors that we've had since the early 2000s, which is the orange, gold, and black, or bronze gold-ish, and then the Kings are going to stay with their black, silver, and white. Good to see there that both teams are actually staying with their logos or staying with their colors and bringing back old logos, kind of like the reverse retro jerseys that they came out with a couple seasons ago, Retro 1 and Retro 2, the old throwback jerseys that both clubs had in those retro series. And it'll be interesting to see if what comes out of this. Now, me as a Ducks fan, I love our third jersey, which is orange and has the old Mighty Ducks logo on it, with our now going to be officially, as it was stated, our main logo, which is the duck foot print. The duck footprint, it's going to be a secondary logo. So I hope we use the orange as our home and then our reverse retro white jersey that we had as the away. That would be the cool concept to do, but it doesn't look like they're going to go down that road. For the Kings, I'm not a Kings fan. As I said, it's our rival. I hate the Kings. But I will say, I do like the 90s logo go back because that is a very good looking logo the Kings have there. And the 90s is the only thing I will respectfully say about our rival down in LA, California. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. I believe that Aesthetics also stated that those jerseys for both teams are supposed to come out before the draft on the 26th of June. So we'll see what happens there. I'll give you an update in a later episode of this Bull Spittin' with Derik Clark eventually when those get dropped. Now, out of the hockey world. We're getting out of the hockey. We started with hockey. We're not going to finish with hockey. I promise this is not an all hockey podcast. We're getting out of hockey. We're going to go in to a different side of the sports world. We're going to go into football. This was talked about, oh my gosh, this is about 4 or 5 days ago now. But the NFL announced that they're going to play in Brazil. And it was also stated they didn't realize, they picked the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles, who both have green on their jerseys. They both have green. They use two different shades of green. Some bad activities are affiliated with the color green. So both teams have been advised when they come to Brazil during the season, quote, don't wear any team colors outside of the stadium. I don't know who in the NFL didn't look up what is what with affiliations and what with bad habits in Brazil, but it would be pretty dang good if you looked up that the colors that both teams are wearing are affiliated with pretty bad things that happen in Brazil. Now, I'm not saying all of Brazil is bad. I'm just saying it's quite ironic that you didn't associate, you didn't look that up, I guess. Not associate, but didn't look that up. Very interesting thing to happen there. I don't know what's going to come out of this. I don't know. But what I will tell you is they should figure that out real quick. Now, as for everything else in the football world, there isn't much because the NFL has ended. The UFL, which is the new spring league, is in their playoffs. But I probably won't even talk about that on this. I do watch it. By watch it, I mean I'll watch a game if it's on. And there is a few former Houston Texans, which is my favorite NFL team. So I'll watch it if their team is playing, which there's a couple guys in the playoffs right now in the UFL. It's a good league. The UFL, I do want to state that is a really good league. It looks like it's going to stay around for more than 1 or 2 seasons, like its predecessors have. So I do respect the UFL. I think it's going to be around for a little bit until it hits a financial wall, and hopefully they get out of it. Because spring football is a big target. They get millions of views, not as much as the NFL, but they do still get millions of views, kind of like a college football prospective area. But we will see what comes out of the UFL. Now, out of football, let's throw that out the window because there isn't much news to talk about in the football world. But there is a lot of news to talk about with cars with 4 wheels. The racing world. The racing world, baby. Like I stated in the beginning of this, we build race cars. We run dirt cars. We haven't ran in a couple of years. We're still building it. Still building our 305 sprint car. We'll be in a 305 tour eventually. Hopefully next year. People that don't know, obviously, if you can't tell, we're not rich. So building a race car does take time, and we went from micro sprints to 305, so it's taken a few years to build the car, but we're eventually going to get it on the racetrack. Hopefully next year. Hopefully we get the car almost done this year, and then we can get it completely done next year or into the winter going into next year, and we can touch the track. Eventually, it'd be really nice and have fun. But in the racing world, for the people that don't know, there's lots to talk about in the racing world. So let's yap about that real quick, shall we? Now, let's talk about a unique thing, F1. We're going to jump with F1 real quick. So F1, for the people that don't know, it's a racing series, predominantly big in Europe, and now over here in the United States, huge. We've got 3 races here in the United States. We've got a Miami Grand Prix, which just happened. We have the United States Grand Prix, which is down in Austin, Texas. And then we have the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is over in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we go from Miami, Florida, and then they're over in Europe right now. They're now over in Canada. They're up in Montreal, actually, for the Canadian Grand Prix. F1 is. The reason I want to bring up F1 is because F1 actually released that in 2026, they're going to have a new package. They're going to have a new rule set for the car, and I thought I'd bring this up. For years, F1 has had the F1 Drive to Survive series on Netflix, which is their documentary series. Amazing. I've seen episodes of it. I don't have Netflix. I have Peacock. I don't have Netflix. So don't at me on that. So I watched it on my brother's Netflix, and when I go over to my brother's house and stuff, I'm not even gonna give you a gist, but basically I've seen it. I've seen some episodes. It's a really great series. Now, one thing with F1, as someone who actually watches every week, one thing with F1 is the cars. It's interesting. So unlike NASCAR, so let me give you a gist. F1, they have the stars from the show, but they don't have the competitiveness because the cars are so different. The main cars right now are Red Bull and Ferrari, and those two are always up front with a little bit of McLaren's. So those 3 teams, Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, which is a Honda motor, Ferrari motor, and a McLaren motor, they all are interesting because those are the 3 main teams with a little bit of Mercedes down as the 4th team. They used to be the dominant team a couple years ago. But right now, those are the 3 good teams. The other teams are all the way in the back, and I'm talking 10, 20-second gaps on these races. And so you have the stars, but you don't have the competitiveness. On the contrary, unlike NASCAR, you have the competitiveness, but not the stars, which is very interesting. I mean, you have a couple stars like Kyle Larson, which will talk about in a minute with his interesting news. But in F1, you don't have that closeness. So F1 announced a new rules package that will make the motor more of like the NASCAR motor, which is more of a motor that is, even though they're from different brands like Honda, Ferrari, and Mercedes and McLaren, they all have different motors. They all have a similar motor rule package, which means you can only modify this and this and this. And if you're going to modify this, you have to talk to F1 first before you even modify it. So I like that. You're making the motors more competitive. You can't really upgrade them as much. Also, the cars are going to be a little bit racier, if that makes any sense. Because the cars are so wide, if they touch each other, they're going to wreck. Because it's an open-wheel car, and the car is just so wide that, and long and wide those cars are, that you touch, and they're going to wreck. So they're making it to where the cars can touch and kind of bump a little bit and actually have more racery racing. So good to see there on F1. Now, let's jump to NASCAR because that's pretty much the big F1 news, and we'll see what comes out of F1 with all of that humbo jumbo close competitiveness package in 2026. And speaking of F1, actually, Audi will eventually join. They bought Saber or Sauber, whatever way you want to pronounce that. I know Europeans pronounce it very interestingly. They also pronounce debris, which is my biggest pet peeve, but it is what it is. I was joking about that, but I will say that we'll see what comes out of the F1 package. Now, NASCAR, interesting. I've met Kyle Larson. We just brought him up. Kyle Larson, literally the biggest name in motorsports right now in North America. Raced dirt his whole life, raced sprint cars, watched him race a 410 sprint car with the All-Star Sprints, All-Star Circuit of Champions, won that race down in Port Royal at Port Royal Speedway. I was in there. I was in the infield, watch him win, met the guy, also met my favorite 410 driver, which is Sheldon Haudenschild. Kyle Larson is a great guy. Big thing, he ran the Indy 500 last week, or 2 weeks now ago. Ran the Indy 500 and then was supposed to run the Coca-Cola 600. It started raining in Indy. It delayed. He said he prioritized the Indy 500. Ran the Indy 500 after, I think it was a 2.5 hour rain delay. Got on a plane. He missed half of the Coca-Cola 600. Once he got off the plane, it rained. And the Coca-Cola 600 in NASCAR, it's a very prestigious NASCAR race down in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he went from Indianapolis, Indiana, Charlotte, North Carolina. He went from helicopter to private jet to back to helicopter just to get there in time. And it started raining, and the race was officially canceled. And the winner was Christopher Bell due to a halfway mark. If you get to the halfway, they could call the race. They called it. Christopher Bell won, which is one of the worst ways you can win in racing, with a rain delay, cancel, and call race. I hate that. But that was the official ruling by NASCAR. So the rule in NASCAR is you have to make every race to be playoff eligible. The top 16 drivers after the regular season make the NASCAR playoffs, with every other driver still competing for points. But those 16 guys are the only 16 guys that can win a championship. Pretty self-explanatory. Interestingly enough, what comes out of this is he has to get a playoff waiver because you have to participate in every race. You have to start the first lap in every race. You have to take the green flag for the initial start. It takes about 2 weeks. NASCAR actually stated that they actually really thought about this and then gave him the playoff waiver. In my eyes, he should have been given the playoff waiver the next freaking day, because that's ridiculous. Kyle Larson, for people that don't know, he is like, I don't want to say the Michael Jackson of NASCAR. That's kind of weird. I'll say it, but not in a real sense of term. But Kyle Larson is kind of like the Michael Jackson of NASCAR in the aspect of he's literally the biggest name in NASCAR right now. He's the biggest name in motorsports right now. He just ran the biggest race in the world, in the country, in the world, in the IndyCar, in the Indy 500. Didn't do so hot. He led a couple laps, but that was because he had a weird pit strategy. Then he's won multiple races this year. He won in 2021, won the NASCAR championship. The guy is a absolute driver of any car you put him in, and it takes you almost 3 weeks to give this guy a waiver. I don't know what to think of that. But it is what it is. I guess I don't know. That's the one thing I can't get my head around, is that it took them a while to give him a playoff waiver, because he's such a big name in motorsports. Heck, some people right now listening to this, if you don't even listen to sports, you probably have heard the name Kyle Larson. So it's just interesting to see that, and to see what has come out of that, which is took too long to give him a waiver, and NASCAR fans are actually upset with that. But we will see what else comes out of this, because the NASCAR has had some interesting rules throughout the years. They've given crazy penalties, absolutely insane penalties the last few weeks. I know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had a fight with Kyle Busch and punched him in the face and got fined $75,000, the biggest fine in NASCAR history. Lost a couple crew guys for a few weeks. So NASCAR has really given out the penalties, to say the least, in motorsports world. Now, speaking of NASCAR, for the people that don't know, I'm going to explain NASCAR real quick. There's 3 series in the NASCAR. NASCAR Web, I guess, would be the word. There's 4 series in the web of NASCAR. There's the Arc Menards series, which is the lowest series. It's like the slowest car. They go about like 180, I think, or 170, 160. They look like early 2000s NASCARs. That's the way I would say they look. Then the Truck series, which is the 3rd tier. They're trucks. They look like a truck, and they race them, and they're about the same with an ARCA car. Then there's the Xfinity series, which is the tier below the Cup series, which is the highest series. The Xfinity series are the guys who just can't make a Cup team and are really, really good. And then the Cup series is your Joey Logano, your Kyle Busch, your Dale Earnhardt Jr., your Dale Earnhardt, your Dale Earnhardt, your Kyle, your Jeff Gordon, your Jimmy Johnson, those guys. That is your Cup series. In the Xfinity series, there's a unique guy going on. There's a guy who used to run in New Zealand a supercar series, the supercar series. Shane Van Gisbergen down in New Zealand. He got called up. He ran a Cup car for Trackhouse Racing in the Cup Series, won the Chicago Street Race, and then next thing you know, he gets offered to run an Xfinity car. He's a full-time Xfinity racer, and last week they were in Portland, and yesterday, which is a road course, and which Portland is, and then yesterday they're in Sonoma, which is also a road course, and supercars in New Zealand. They only run road courses, and he won back-to-back races in that Xfinity car. So his 3 NASCAR wins, his 1 in Cup Series, and now his 2 consecutive Xfinity Series wins are on road courses. His celebration is to kick a rugby ball, because that's a big sport in New Zealand. He used to play it as a kid, as he stated. Kick it in the stands. He signs the ball, then kicks it in the stands. He stated to the media, quote, "Yeah, this isn't the exact quote. Actually, I summarized it, but basically, I'll just say it like this. Basically, he was like, yeah, I'm pretty good right now, but I need to learn the ovals, because he's not doing too good on an oval, which is most of the NASCAR tracks in all 4 series. But he's really good on the road courses, and he just won back-to-back races on a road course. So Shane Van Gisbergen, good job out there in Portland, and this last night in Sonoma. Hopefully, you can get a win on an oval, buddy. Now, we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of sports, I guess. I like how I'm talking right now. I'm talking very interestingly. I guess I'll just get in the nitty-gritty of interesting sports. There's some interesting sports news that has been coming. There's sports news every single freaking day. So I won't be able to talk about it every single episode. But as we hit about almost the 30-minute mark of this podcast, I don't want this first episode to be so big. So I'm going to just end it with what the news that just got dropped yesterday that everyone in the United States of America is wigging out about. Caitlin Clark, no, not related to me, who is the number 1 player in women's basketball right now. She carried Iowa University to the championship in 2023. She lost it. Carrying back this year in March Madness, won the national championship. Now she plays for the Indiana Fever. Shout out to Pat McAfee, the former kicker of the Indianapolis Colts, who has a show on ESPN who keeps just talking about this girl. She's amazing. She's a great player. She's the first rookie in WNBA history to reach 100 points in 12 games, or 200 points, one of the two. Really great girl. She did not make the USA Olympic basketball team on the women's side. She was cut from the roster. A girl who averages almost 30 points a game in the WNBA for the Indiana Fever did not make the cut for the Team USA Olympic basketball roster. Now, there wasn't any news on why they decided to cut her and not put her on the roster. But my initial views on this is, what the heck is Team USA kind of thinking? Now, granted, I know there's people that are like, okay, yeah, she's really good, but maybe she just wasn't that good for Team USA. For the people that don't watch the sport, for people that don't watch consistently the WNBA or basketball in general. And I understand that. Yeah, maybe there's a couple girls that are kind of better than her. Maybe. I don't know exactly who is on the roster. Actually, that's a good point. I don't know exactly who's on the roster. For our women's team for the United States Olympics. That's a good actual. That's a good point. I don't even know who else would be on the roster. I don't even know anyone else that. I don't even know. I don't even know on the women's side. But anyway, think about it this way: Kaylin Clark right now is like the LeBron. I don't want to say LeBron James. That's. I might have to. I might have to actually say LeBron James. Yeah, I'm just gonna say LeBron James. She's like the LeBron James of the WNBA. She's literally one of the greatest players right now in the league, and as a rookie, she's breaking records. So, me personally, why wouldn't you have her on the roster? I get it if there's maybe a girl, maybe two girls that are better than her, but right now, as it seems, she's the greatest player in the highest league of women's basketball in the United States of America. Why the heck is she not on the roster? I don't know. I don't know. To end with that, I wanted to talk about it for a bit because I knew somebody probably would bring that up in the comments. I do not know. But I digress. And there we go. That is the ending of our first podcast because I don't want this one to go long. I kind of want this one to just be a little bit of a gist of what's going to happen throughout the series of this podcast. I don't know how long I'm going to run this. We'll see what happens. But that will do it for episode 1 of the Bull Spittin' with Derik Clark podcast. Don't worry, my brother Devin will probably be on here eventually. When I get another mic, actually, I have one mic right now. I have to set up a second mic, which won't be a problem, but I do have to set a second one up. So, thank you to everyone who has, thank you to everyone who's listening, actually, because this is the first episode. Why would I say thank you to everyone who has supported when this is the first episode? So, thank you to everyone who is listening right now. And until then, I'll see you on the flip side. So, I don't know how long it'll be till the next episode. I'll probably record these on Sundays because that's usually when, and you'll probably see this on actually, I'm recording this so early, you might see this Sunday night. So, we'll see what happens when these get released. We'll find out a rhythm pattern and everything else. So, until then, folks, as always, keep a smile on your face. Until next time, Derik Clark, signing out. Peace.